I'm here at the political centre of London. Obviously the Houses of Parliament behind me, just down the road is the Prime Minister's residence at 10 Downing Street, and just across the Irish Sea in Northern Ireland we've had today the end of the G8 summit. The political bigwigs, actually front men for the real power in the hidden hand, that have been discussing, among other things, the subject of Syria. And in the last few days we've suddenly seen the European Union remove the ban on supplying the rebels in Syria with weapons, and we've had Barack Obama saying that the United States will now supply the rebels with weapons because the regime of Assad in Syria has crossed the red line, which is using chemical weapons upon the so-called rebels, without any evidence whatsoever, by the way, but they need to do something for reasons I'll come to. What I just want to do for visitors to the website is put what is happening in Syria in some perspective. We have had for some years now what has become known as the Arab Spring. And what that has been portrayed as and promoted as is people of the Middle East and North Africa spontaneously rebelling against oppression and tyranny. That's the way it's been promoted, because that's what the system, the hidden hand, wants us to believe is the situation. I said a week ago at the Bilderberg gathering just north of London that the Arab Spring could be described in a single sentence. It is people with brown faces being played off against people with brown faces so that people with white faces can steal their land. And that is what we are seeing, and Syria is just another step in a long planned, way back long planned series of countries being hijacked and taken over with the Arab Spring as the front and the excuse and the cover. In my books over many years, I've been pointing out, way back at the time of the Iraq invasion in 2003, that this is actually a sequence of events that's long planned. They're not random invasions of countries, they're not random rebellions against the incumbent regime. And here's a couple of pieces of background to that. General Wesley Clark is a former Supreme Allied Commander Europe of NATO. And he said in a television interview in 2007 that just days after 9/11, the following happened when he visited the Pentagon. Remember, days after 9/11. In fact, as he says, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people in the joint staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you've got to come in and talk to me for a second." "Well, you're too busy," he said. No, he says, "We've made the decision." Remember, this is 10 days after 9/11. "We have made the decision, we're going to war with Iraq." No one's talking about this. Blair's not talking about it, Bush is not talking about it, but it's all there waiting to go. They're just not telling us. And so in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq in 2003, Blair was running this place at the time, and boy Bush, they were saying, well, we're still trying to get a peaceful settlement. And knew all along they were going to invade. Liars, liars, liars. Anyway, Clark goes on. I said, this is the 20th of September 2001, I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He said, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." And then he said, Clark, "So I came back to see the same guy some weeks later, a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan." I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, Oh, it's worse than that. And he reached over to his desk, picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I've just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office, Rumsfeld's office today. And he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq, and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. I said, is it classified? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. And I saw him a year or so later, and I said, you remember that? He said, sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you. So here we have a situation where all these countries that have been picked off, and Syria is the latest, they're trying to do that too, they were all planned long before. Not only that, in September 2000, 12 months before 9/11, the so-called neocon group, neoconservatives that controlled Bush and the Republican Party and came to power with Bush in early 2001 when he became president, they produced this document in September 2000 in which they called for multiple wars in multiple countries by American forces, and the countries they named that they wanted to attack were these same countries that Clark's talking about, plus some others. So it was all planned. And then more recently, a former French foreign minister said that Britain, this bloody lot, had been planning a war against Syria for some 2 years before the unrest broke out in the Arab country. Exactly what I've been saying for years. The statement was by Roland Dumas, and it came during a recent interview with the French parliamentary TV network, LCP. And this is what he said. I'm going to tell you something. I was in England 2 years before the violence in Syria on other business. I met with top British officials who confessed to me that they were preparing something in Syria, he said. He continued, this was in Britain, not in America. Britain was organizing an invasion of rebels into Syria. They even asked me, although I was no longer Minister for Foreign Affairs, if I would like to participate. Responding to a question on the motive behind inciting violence in Syria, Dumas said, very simple, with the very simple aim to overthrow the Syrian government, because in the region it's important to understand that the Syrian regime makes anti-Israeli talk. And then the former foreign minister added that he'd been told by an Israeli prime minister a long time ago that Tel Aviv would seek to destroy any country that did not get along with it in the region. And it's not just about Israel, it's about the acquisition of country after country across the Middle and Near East, North Africa, and then going deeper south into Africa, that has been planned for decades and decades and decades. Now, how are you going to pick country after country? Well, first you want a major trigger that can start the process. We know that trigger as 9/11. 19 Arab hijackers that couldn't fly Cessnas did not fly wide-bodied jets in a way that professional wide-body jet pilots have told me they could never do. And they were not behind 9/11. It was, as they say, an inside job, a problem reaction solution. Create the problem, get the reaction, do something, offer the solution. Solution, war on terror, invasion of Afghanistan. We're on our way. Now, we need to go into Iraq next. Now, we can't, keep saying it for the same reason, because people might cotton on there's a pattern here. So we have to find different excuses for the same process of acquisition. So weapons of mass destruction. We don't even need a real problem to justify going into Iraq. We'll just tell them there's a problem that doesn't really exist. And Blair, like I say, who was running this show here at the time, absolutely knew there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So did Bush. They're both professional liars, just to persuade people that this action should take place to serve the master plan and the masters they serve, and push this agenda on that I'm talking about. So then they want to go for Libya. Oh, right. What can we do there? Weapons mass destruction. We've used that one, haven't we? Yeah, yeah, okay. I know. What we'll do, I've got the great idea. This is how we'll work it. What we do is we'll train and arm rebels. We'll put our people on the ground while saying we've not got any people on the ground. And then we'll get our rebels, mercenaries, to attack the regime of Gaddafi. At this point, no one says a word, okay? Shh. No government reaction, no media reaction, shh. And then the Gaddafi regime will respond to that attack, and at that point, trigger everybody. Microphones everywhere. Media, off you go. He's killing his own people. And so you then create a hysteria and you create a madness that goes like this. We, NATO, have to go in and bomb the Libyan cities like Tripoli to protect the people from violence. And you bomb the crap out of the place, you slaughter mass of people, you destroy cities, you take what was the most economically successful country in North Africa, in fact, you know, in many ways Africa overall, and you destroy it. And the tribal wars that Gaddafi, for all his faults, was actually keeping a handle on, now that's gone. Now we have constant civil war in Libya, constant ongoing violence. But the outcome, those that were behind the invasion, that's what it was, now control the oil, and they control what was before the at least semi-independent banking system. So now, okay, tick, 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 who's next? Syria. Okay, Syria, how do we do that? Well, it worked in Libya, didn't it, mate? I mean, let's try again. So, provable fact, loads of the rebels that were fighting Gaddafi were moved into Syria. And they start then doing the same thing. They start attacking the Assad regime. Shh, don't say a word. Shh. Oh, wait a minute, he's going to retaliate. Go, microphones, 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 media, off you go. He's killing his own people. And they tried for so long to, if you like, legally supply arms and other support to the rebels, but they couldn't get it through. So they did it covertly, as they always do, through places like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, who were just, you know, satellite states of NATO in the region. And terrible atrocities on both sides, but terrible atrocities by these rebels have gone on constantly, including chopping people to pieces. But the rebels have been painted by this lot, the government anyway, and the American government, etc., as the good guys. Keep it simple: good guys, bad guys. No shades of grey. But what has happened recently? And they thought they were going to do a Libya. They thought they were going to get rid of Assad very quickly. It's not happened. And what has happened in the last few weeks is Assad's forces have been taking back areas of Syria which the rebels had held. It was going pear-shaped for this lot and the others around the world. So suddenly, as this was happening, the EU dropped the ban on supplying weapons to the rebels. And suddenly, just by coincidence, Assad is said to have crossed Obama's red line by using chemical weapons with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And so what we're looking at here is not protecting civilians, just as it never was protecting civilians in Libya. We're looking at an effort to make sure this rebellion, so-called, removes the Assad regime. So another tick goes on the list, and it's off to Lebanon and off to Iran. And, you know, I'll come back to this line about brown faces playing off against brown faces so that white faces can steal their land. And, you know, I don't despair very much, but because there's no point, but I have a despair every now and again. I think I deserve it. Because I look at what's happening in the Middle East and I see Muslim faction played off against Muslim faction. Sunnis played off against Shiites, the Shiites which are the dominant in Iran, and the Sunnis that are the dominant in most of the Middle East. And this factional war has gone on for centuries. Oh, take me own mother, it's mad down here, over an argument over who's the right successor to the Prophet Muhammad. Did I really just say that? Is it actually true? It is. And please, you're arguing and fighting among each other, the Sunnis and the Shiites and any other bloody thing, just like the Protestants and Catholics were divided and ruled. And while you're fighting each other, the people that are orchestrating all this are using both of you to play yourselves off against each other so they can take everything from all of you. And this is why, you see, Al-Qaeda is a very interesting story in relation to all this, because Al-Qaeda was created by the CIA in Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So at that point, they brought Osama bin Laden out of Saudi Arabia to front up all this. And so at that point, Al-Qaeda, good guys. Al-Qaeda means database, the base, because it was the database of names on the CIA database of so-called Mujahideen fighters against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Now, so Al-Qaeda are the good guys then. Then we have 9/11, and they want to invade Afghanistan for part of this sequence, and so they have to find an excuse to invade Afghanistan. So now Al-Qaeda are the bad guys, and the good guy, Osama bin Laden, came in to front the fight against the Soviet Union. He's now the bad guy. They blame him for 9/11. Rubbish, rubbish. Anyway, what then happens is they justify the invasion of Afghanistan to get bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. So now they must be schizophrenic. Now they're the bad guys. Then Al-Qaeda is in Libya, and they're now on the rebel side against Gaddafi, so now they're the good guys again. And now Al-Qaeda has moved in, good guys still, hope you're following this, into Syria, and they are the dominant force within the so-called rebels. Now, people would think, well, that's crazy. Why do they say Al-Qaeda is good and Al-Qaeda is bad? One simple common theme. What does it suit us to say and do in the circumstances that we are facing? So all this stuff relating to Syria, the words and claims spoken by Boy Bush and Tony Blair, now David Cameron and Barack Obama in relation to all this sequence of events, the words spoken by John Kerry, the Secretary of State in America, and by William Hague, little boy in short trousers, school cap, you can't miss him, who's the Foreign Secretary in this country, and has been pressing for a long, long time to allow the arming of rebels and the supply of weapons to the rebels in Syria. Every single one of them is a solid gold liar who should be in jail with the key thrown somewhere mid-Atlantic, because the number of people whose lives, in terms of ending their lives and destroying their lives with being maimed in these conflicts and wars and manipulated rebellions, does not even begin to register. Such is the scale over these years that we've lived through. And this is just the latest. It's a scam. It's a scam. And anyone who believes it, well, lost cause, because it's so blatant. And finally, for goodness sake, Muslims in these countries, what are you doing? Allowing yourselves to be played like a stringed instrument so that your land and your freedom can be taken away by these characters. Over and out.